Well, hey guys, and all you wiretappers out there, and anybody else is listening here on YouTube as well as a podcast. But no, I've noticed, especially here on YouTube, I did this several years ago on Joey Aiuppa, the Chicago outfit boss during the '70s, and the one that went down behind the casino investigation. And I talked about the time that he got his nickname, Joey Doves. Kind of a halfway well-known story, and everybody knows that nickname, and they know most people know it has something to do with doves. Joey Aiuppa was the Chicago mob boss depicted as Remo Gadget in the film Casino. In his early years, Aiuppa was known as Joey O'Brien. He fought under the Irish name of Joey O'Brien. He was a young boxer. There was more than one Italian guy that did that because the Irish were more the dominant faction when young Sicilian guys had been over here for a little while, but by the 20s and 30s, they were starting to move up, but the Irish still pretty well ran everything. But he was. I looked up in the old FBI reports, and I found out that the FBI had an informant. As usual, everything starts with an informant many times. I've used them a few times myself. Rats, as many of you guys out there call them, but they're immensely valuable to us in law enforcement. We're just part of the game. It's all a big game, and we're just part of it. You can choose your side. I chose the side of being law enforcement, and some people chose the side of being in the mob and other crimes too. But to me, it was always a game. It was never personal. Just like the mob, it was never personal. Unless somebody tried to make it personal with me, but mainly nobody did. And no mob guy sure as heck ever did. But anyhow, the Bureau up in Chicago had an informant that said he was going to be going down to the area of Frontenac, Kansas to hunt doves. So, of course, they said, hey, let's get on this. Let's see who his contacts down there. And the same informant said that he would probably meet up with some Kansas City residents, probably somebody from the Savella organization in the 60s. So it was 1962 when he got down to Frontenac, but he'd been going down there for a while now. Now, Frontenac, Kansas is the closest larger town in Kansas is Pittsburgh, Kansas. There's a southeast Kansas, I believe is the name of the college down there. Pittsburgh, they call it in Pittsburgh, Kansas. They have a big printing program. I had a brother-in-law that went through their printers program. So he goes down there and you have to wonder, how did he happen to go down there? So I went down there myself, went to some of the places where he was actually had gone to during that time. And I'll talk about that in a minute, but I talked to, there's like a little museum right outside of Frontenac for the coal mining. They used to do strip mining in this area. And I talked to the museum curator or operator there. And they said that after the turn of the century in the early 1900s, 1920s, a lot of Sicilians immigrated to the area to work in the coal mines. It was really hard, dirty work. And we all know the new immigrants are the ones that get the hardest and the dirtiest work. And so they worked in the coal mines down there. And there's a large Sicilian population in the town of Frontenac, which is it was like the small company town for the coal companies. And they still have, I don't know if they still do, I don't think they still do strip mining. There's a lot of what they call strip mining pits, which are great for fishing. I used to know a lot of guys that would drive down there and fish the strip pits, they called them. So he goes down there into southeastern Kansas, right next to Missouri. It's just across the line from Missouri, maybe 10 or 15 miles from the state line of Missouri. To hunt doves, and he knows local people. He meets people from Kansas City, although we will never find out exactly who it was. They follow him around. They hang out in the town. I'm not sure how they did it. They may have gotten they're smart. They got a local guy to go hang around and then tell him where he was going. He went to a restaurant bar down there called Bartos, which is still there. See, I took a motorcycle trip down into the South and the Mid-South, all the way down to Louisiana, looking at Bonnie and Clyde sites. And I stopped in Frontenac and looked at these places up, and Bartos is still a bar and restaurant. It's a pretty good place to eat. I was still there then. That was a couple, 3 years ago. So he was seen in these places. He was seen in the hotel, motel, which was now torn down. I couldn't find where that was. And he went out over the next couple of weeks. He'd see him in town at night at this, or at the Bartos at night, talking to people, kind of socializing, having a vacation, go out and go hunting during the day. And he was shooting doves like crazy. And they followed him around the different places. He took the doves. They saw him taking the doves to a place called Palooka's. It was a grocery store and what we call a locker plant. They would dress out meat, and maybe they'd buy a beef or two from a local farmer and cut it up and then sell the cuts of meat. But they also would dress game for hunters, and they were dressing out the game and so, they didn't know exactly what was going on. They couldn't stay on him 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They knew he was going in and out of there. So eventually, they found out he was leaving. They alerted the Fish and Game Department, and up in Chicago, they kind of tailed along behind him, is my understanding, but you couldn't stay right on his tail, of course, and might even lose him once in a while. But as he got up and pulled into his house, there was a Fish and Game guy waiting for him. Asked to look in his trunk. He looked in his trunk and he found 567 frozen, dressed out mourning doves. Now, under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act of 1918, it's illegal at the time to possess more than 24 doves per person. So they arrested him for it. They confiscated the doves. I actually have pictures of those doves in the where they kept them on ice and then presented them as evidence whenever they went to court. Had pictures of them in the courtroom. Went through a series of appeals. This is 1962, and wouldn't be till 1966 then he finally gives up the fight. It was just like Nick Savella. He will not give up the fight. He was eventually sentenced to a 3 months jail sentence and given a $1,000 fine. At the trial, a local man down in Frontenac named Andrew Williams testified that during the 2-week period when Aiuppa was down there, he estimated he had cleaned between 900 and 1,400 mourning doves and put them in plastic bags for various hunters, not all for Aiuppa, down in that area. And they were all taken, put in cold storage in the Dairyland freezer in Frontenac, which is now Palooka's. It was Palooka's also back then, but they called it the Dairyland freezer. All of his hunting companions, and I couldn't get the names of those guys, refused to testify. So he kind of took the load, and he took all the doves back. You have to wonder what he was going to do with 567 frozen doves. He had a joint or two. He had a lot of friends up there. He was the director of the local bartenders union. He had a company that manufactured gambling equipment. So he was a pretty active guy. So that's a story of how my boss, Joseph Aiuppa, also known as Joey O'Brien, but also known as during modern times as Joey Doves. And I got a feeling that the press gave him that moniker after that trial because it was all over the newspapers. Thanks, folks.